welcome you to the session which is called Education that Fosters Intercultural Understanding and Appreciation and the Values of Objectivity and Truthfulness. For the audience online, I think it would be very useful to read the introduction, so the brief concept note. So we have the terms of discussion, if you will, at least the context. The human community is rapidly evolving from a diverse network of distinct geopolitical, racial, ethnic, religious, and cultural groups into a closely interconnected, interdependent cauldron of intermixed groups. This growing contact is intensifying the awakening of social aspirations and social energy, accelerating discovery and promoting invention. At the same time, it is challenging prevailing beliefs, institutions, customs, and cultural practices, and generating increasing levels of tension, anxiety, and conflict between erstwhile isolated communities. Education is the essential institution for preparing youth for a rapidly changing world. Let me repeat that. Education is the essential institution for preparing youth for a rapidly changing world. What type of education do we need to enhance intercultural understanding, tolerance, and appreciation? How can we develop an education that accepts and respects intercultural diversity and prepares youth for harmonious living in our increasingly complex world? So this is our context, and I will introduce myself. I'm Dr. Mila POPOVICH. I'm the fellow and the trustee of the World Academy. I am also a performing artist, an artistic director, okay, and now social artist that is designing social movements and institutions, and I've been recently appointed by the government of Montenegro to found a new institution called Directorate for Interculturalism at the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights. And we are building a new youth movement for social change exactly around these questions and working closely between the civic sector, which is the NGOs, the youth, and the entire society, and the government, rebuilding that trust and bonding them all towards regenerating and transforming our society for the better. So with that, if you agree, I have another lady here, the only lady with me. If you agree, I would like to give the floor first to our dear friend Mustafa, who is coming from Turkey for Marmara University, because he is the host. And we start with a man and we'll layer our wisdom between masculine and feminine energies and principles. So Mustafa, if you are ready, the floor is yours, or the virtual space is yours.
Yeah, I think I'm ready, and I can go first if we decide to order like the reverse the order.
Yes.
So let me first.
I would like us to have a brief position up to 5 minutes, every single one of us, in order to make sure I have time to talk to the youth and engage them. So we'll be as brief as possible as we can. Thank you. And to the point.
Mine is going to be very brief. So let me share my presentation with you. And yeah, I assume you can see it right now.
Yes.
Yeah, as far as I can also follow from the video. So thanks for giving the floor. And first of all, I feel really excited about this event, although I would. So as for my perspective related to our panel topic, I am an assistant professor of English language teaching, and my study area is in technology integration, like computer-assisted language learning and technology-enhanced language learning. So I'll be approaching this same topic, intercultural understanding, from a technology and education perspective, especially considering, language as a means or language learning as a platform. So, I mean, like when we consider like what we have today, I mean, we know that in our world, like 5.2 billion people actually use the internet. So that makes almost 70% of the world. And the boundaries separating cultures are more minute than ever. So they are like, intermixed, and plus it's not that big like anymore. However, I mean, like we know that globalization has turned our planet into an interconnected web of interactions, which is good. I mean, it's swift, it's quick. I mean, right now, I mean, it's also an indicator of that. I can join the session online by using the internet, the technology as a tool, and it makes us like, connected. However, this unprecedented closeness also amplifies misunderstandings, stereotypes, and cultural divisions as we follow things on like social media, especially like previously Twitter, X, those kind of platforms actually can be the ground for people actually to also express these sort of some unprecedented like things as well. And the question is, how can education help us navigate this complexity with or without technology? I don't see a kind of context where we can do this without technology. So technology is just mostly normalized, I think, in our life. I mean, in most people's like on Earth, I can't say that like we're 100% of it, but I mean, it's now mostly actually with technology. And I am also curious about the approach of the people actually who are listening to us right now. And I have just a quick code for you. Maybe I can also turn that into a little activity. I mean, as a teacher, as a professor, actually, I like, presenting things in a kind of like sort of activity. So please, like, give yourself a minute, maybe. I mean, that would be more than enough just to read this. And I want you to, like, in mind or by speaking it out, I want you to complete that blank actually that we have there. Like, this is a code about an invention. Maybe you have already seen that before. Maybe you know this code, but if not, I mean, you can remain silent if you know it. And I want you to complete this, blank. This is one of my favorite actually codes recently. So what do you think this invention that we have there? Is it like technology, computers, mobile phones, Google, or something else? Do you think it's time? Maybe, I mean, Ms. Popovich, so if you can share some, because you have the microphone as far as I know. I mean, if there are like some answers that you can hear, maybe you can also share like a few of them.
So you would like me to share some answers if anybody has come up with some answers, or maybe you can give a suggestion so that we can because we don't have much time. Maybe
Okay,
we can
I
at the
see.
end share
So
some insights.
yeah, I mean, this is like a kind of like good code in terms of like understanding people's approach to technology, especially AI these days. And when I just show this like code, usually my audience actually comes up with answers like, it's technology, it's mobile phones, smartphones, because they make us like, appear wise, but we are not wise without them, like things like that. How this code, like very interestingly, actually, I mean, dates back to 375 BC, and it's a code by Socrates. And now you may have some guesses, maybe, because like we are talking about, more than 2000 years ago, and it's writing actually. I mean, this is how Socrates at the time, and the people, maybe his followers as well, this is what actually they thought of like the invention of writing. So, I mean, right now, we may have also some concerns about technology, about, AI. But however, when it comes to interculturality, I think that's what, keeps us connected. And that could be the solution by itself as well. Right now, I'm just going to focus on it. The role of technology in fostering intercultural understanding. Technology, I mean, in my opinion, especially AI, because AI is a little bit different from the technologies actually we have had so far. It's a transformative force in education. It enables personalized learning experiences tailored to diverse cultural contexts. I mean, for example, I guess everyone could be familiar with the app Duolingo. That's the most popular educational app. That's why I shaded it here. But the on the right, you see another application called Any. These kind of applications are based on large language models and natural language processing. So they can just help anyone, indeed, interested in learning a language or not. So they are just helping people learn, practice a language, but at the same time focusing on these cultural nuances because there are different characters you can chat with, and these are all AI based. And at the same time, AI chatbots and global collaboration platforms are also bridging gaps. In one program, there are studies actually on this. In one program, students from India, Taiwan, and the USA worked on climate change projects using AI tools, learning to collaborate across cultural divides. And this is something we can also consider planning in education, like, teaching responsible AI, doing capacity building, and working on international collaboration, and then we can assess impact, and the impact is usually huge. And finally, not just AI, but also virtual reality platforms. On the right again, you see an application, which is among my favorites, where you can actually see real people recorded, and you can just simulate a conversation with them. And this sort of VR simulations of different cultural settings in a study, actually, done very recently, reported a significant increase in cultural empathy compared to traditional methods. So far, we can see a lot of affordances, a lot of benefits of technology, especially towards intercultural understanding. However, we should also accept the fact that technology is not without its challenges, especially, that's why actually I shared the quote at the beginning. There could be bias against those technologies, plus the technologies itself or themselves can be biased as well, because AI is learning from the input that the developers provide. And if that input is biased, and the AI models actually will be biased as well. And we should also be aware of this fact. And algorithms trained on biased data sets may fail to represent marginalized cultures accurately. That's why addressing this demands creating diverse data sets and auditing AI systems regularly. And they're getting better and better, by the way. I'm sure you're all familiar with like ChatGPT. It's only 2 years old. And when you compare it, how it was 2 years ago and now, there is a lot of like development and improvement considering whether it's biased or not. Another challenge, the digital divide. Of course, we have digital natives, people who are born into technology, and we have digital immigrants, as we use the so-called terms. It also becomes a major hurdle, and nearly 33% of the global population still lacks internet access. And bridging this divide is crucial for equitable intercultural education as well. So internet access to these resources becomes also critical. And when we are taking actions, I think this is something we need to consider as well, the major actions or minor actions. So moving forward, the vision for AI-enhanced education, to leverage AI effectively, we need deliberate strategies for sure, as I said. First, there are like 3 things I would like to share, and then I'll be done. First, fostering cultural intelligence through AI-driven intercultural simulations. Imagine AI-powered global classrooms where students debate universal challenges like climate change or inequality, guided by cultural insights. Yesterday I listened to some talks, and I remember comments about like sustainable development goals. We have only a few years to complete them, but we are still behind the schedule. I think maybe AI is something that can, quicken the process or helps with that. And second, we must integrate ethical AI education, of course. Like Lee reminds us that AI is made by humans and affects humans. So we should, be emphasizing the need for human-centric AI development, because most people are also concerned that AI is going to replace them. These kind of concerns should be dealt with as well. And finally, international mobility programs can be enhanced with AI translation. I don't know whether you used AI translators. Some of them are even built in actually, like smartphones. They can also help people for like in terms of improved adaptability and also conflict resolution skills, because language could be a barrier at some point, even though English is one of the, like medium languages, like as a lingua franca, but still, language could become a barrier, and like this sort of AI solutions can help with that as well. So as educators, like we are not just preparing students for jobs, but for global citizenship. And by making use of AI and technology responsibly, of course, we can cultivate generations who not only understand, but also value the richness of cultural diversity. And this is like, when we are planning education, this is education's ultimate promise in our interconnected era. And this is not something we can like ignore. So we need to work on this so that, we can also help with the use of technology in education to cultivate interculturality. So thank you. I hope I am within the time limit, and hope I have been able to present my points.
Thank you, Mustafa. That was wonderful. Well, you took us straight into the present moment, and I'm going to take just a second to clarify something. Apparently, what Mustafa is talking about, that the intercultural refers to the relationship between the processor and the machine and the man, the human, right? So if you know the term cyborg, that we have already are becoming a mixed human machine, right? And processor enhanced human. So interculturalism in that, or intercultural, in that sense, refers to the relationship between these two different entities. And that Mustafa is pointing out what it is that will be beneficial to human relationships when we are enhanced by technology, which it has the capacity, particularly immersive technology, to put you literally in the shoes of another, to put you in the perspective of another person so you can actually understand another person better through immersive technology, or can connect us better. But equally, Mustafa was pointing out that because humans are coding and feeding information into processors, that's how all the biases and prejudices and ignorance and fear can also be coded into the machine and accelerated and intensified for potentially destroying each other. So this is what's at stake. This is what intercultural means as well, which I really appreciate, Mustafa. You started from this point, and I will just conclude here with my remark and clarification that humans have always been what is called prosthetic beings, prosthesis. You know what that means, right? We have always extended our biological capacities by an external invention. So you have glasses, for example, right? You fix your teeth, you have glasses, you have a prosthetic leg, or you have machinery or computer. You have always enhanced your powers by our invention. Human being is also human because it's curious. It's never going to stop inventing. The only question is what and who and how our inventions are serving. Who is benefiting from them? What is the goal, right? So these are the ethical questions that Mustafa was also mentioning. So now I would like to introduce our dear friend, new friend, Elena Mustakova, who is evolutionary leader, co-founder of Unitive Justice and Global Security Synergy Circle, and founder of the IntegraLight Institute for Consciousness, Society, and Wellbeing. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you. Just for context, we're now transitioning from technology and language into somebody like myself who has dedicated 4 decades to the study of the invisible human dimension. So I was a tenured professor in humanistic and transpersonal psychology, as well as clinician and trainer of therapists for many years. And we work with that dimension, which is responsible for what we code into technological programs, and also what we code into writing. In the excerpt from Socrates, ultimately, whether it's writing or computer programs, we are putting our understanding. So when we talk about intercultural understanding and education for intercultural understanding in the new millennium, certainly in the 21st century, the first thing that we have to recognize is that we are finding ourselves, all of us, at the threshold of an evolutionary leap. And so we need competencies and skills that actually prepare us to enter and participate consciously and competently in this leap. So what are these competencies and skills? I would say that one very important competence for intercultural understanding is the historical competence, understanding that human societies have evolved from small circles that were understood, familiar, and trusted: the family, the tribe, the city-state, the nation-state. And even though it appears that we're still living in a world governed by nation-states, that is as helpful as it is right now also a bit of a problem, because people are having a hard time realizing that the nation-state is not the ultimate human socio-historical formation, that in fact we're now living in what is more and more a planetary civilization. So from the point of view of historical competence, people have understood self and the other very differently in tribal relationships, in city-state relationships, in nation-state relationships where you're either a citizen of a country or an alien. And now in a planetary civilization of which you all, young people, are the beneficiaries and the citizens. So that historical competence is important. Another competence that is very important is evolutionary understanding. And that's something that many of you may not have been exposed to yet, but there is plenty of evidence and knowledge now that human consciousness actually evolves, not just develops in the personal lifespan, but evolves collectively. And these evolutionary stages in collective consciousness have each served a very adaptive purpose in their time. What is really challenging at this time in the world is that different evolutionary stages of collective consciousness are coexisting in a planetary civilization and unfortunately clashing with each other because we have not understood how to relate to these different stages. So what is really a competence here? When we have the opportunity to do this kind of intercultural education, which goes deeper, we actually learn the value and the dignity of each evolutionary worldview, because each stage of collective consciousness actually manifests in a worldview which has its own value and dignity. And even when it appears that different worldviews are in conflict, for example, the law and order, relatively nationalistic worldview and level of consciousness often conflicts with the ecological integrative worldview, which is a different stage of collective consciousness. We have to understand what it looks like to enter into dialogue across these different worldviews and to come up with consultative solutions. Now that takes me to some skills, and I would say that the most important set of skills that are to be taught in the coming future that are not taught to my knowledge yet in universities are consultative skills. Consultation is very different than debate. It's very different than conversation.
I'm going to talk about a concept, the concept of global understanding. And the background is that I organized an International Year of Global Understanding, initiated it and organized it up to UNESCO resolution for a UN International Year on Global Understanding. And I'm going to talk about the experiences I made in this very long process, dealing with people from all over the world, with more than 30 regional action centers based in different regions across the globe. So my experience is that the history of schools is still very important. And we have to understand that the curriculum of schools, of public schools worldwide, are based on decisions on the second half of the 19th centuries when in most European countries, education became a public affair. So then people were discussing the issue, what should be taught in schools, in parliaments or in different ministries. And there was a lot of competition between different fields of knowledge. And finally, some of them made it. And the implication of that is what the World Academy of Arts and Science, but also the Club of Rome and many other organizations are criticizing, is that they were building silos of knowledge and that these silos are closed. I think this is only one part of the problem. The other part is what it's involved in the discipline. It's a disciplinization of knowledge. That means that what is taught in school is controlled by disciplines and their methods. And what data are important. And disciplines have been formed for the national interest to serve national interest in technology, but especially also the economy and imperialistic strategies and so on, from Europe at least. And this disciplining is based on a methodology of each discipline. So in fact, schools are still today organized in a national logic. Elena has just mentioned in her presentation. And not only that, disciplines are also organizing their data in national statistic and so on, serving to ministries and so on. So we have a worldview that is based on national interests of education and a set of disciplines that are trying to master the big variety of realities across the globe. So when we are entering in what Mustafa told us in the first presentation, the interconnectedness of people to technical tools in real time. So when we want to communicate, then we can say, okay, communication is expressed in English, and more or less we agree on that, at least so far. But then the worldviews behind it are still based on the national logic. So we have added national logics to an international worldview. But this can't be the solution, because we need to have a global understanding of our own living forms of living, life worlds that is localized in certain places and certain historical moments, as Elena pointed correctly. So if you're going to talk to other people living in other contexts, we first of all have to make clear with the people on site how they are thinking, and making children see their own living conditions, local living conditions, in a global perspective. That would be, in my view, the only solution to overcome the ongoing nationalization of global realities. So the idea is that people are understanding one another.
Shall we just turn him up?
Hello? Can you hear me? So we'll just hand off the audio and the audio space to you, the virtual space to you. Elena had a wonderful conversation with us about consciousness as the basis of reality and what that means in terms of education and in terms of intercultural understanding and competencies. So we'll hand that over to you, Yi-Heng.
I think, to me, I have actually this text, which I would like to address first. We should not ignore the differences between East and West, South and North. There are differences. However, we have to be open-minded and be guided by our own real self with compassion that triggers everything. We need to see every activities as a process that should co-evolve with the people, environment, and society involved. To become a person like such is the aim of education. So it's not necessary to elaborate too much, but I think the basic concept here is we do need, let's say, once you want to have to become an open-minded person, then you have to be self-confident enough. And even you are able to do that with, well, when we say this today, is such a plurality and also multi-races and multicultural world. It's not only China and non-China, and that's it. So it's a totally different culture, and even China itself have a number of different cultures. So, and with all this background, ChatGPT can assist us to a certain extent, but the judgment, so the people have to learn to judge by themselves. Even they are open-minded, but they still be able to judge, and that is critical. And where to judge it is always coming back to the real self. And that real self is started with compassion. So when we see a process, well, we do anything, it's a process. It's not a point, single point. It's a connected sequent events. So it is a co-evolve. I'm talking about many cases today, especially under development or even in the economic, I would say, happenings today, such as fighting against the EV with high pressure, high tax, or fighting against the overcapacity of Chinese, etc., etc. All this is a co-evolution process. So Chinese have to understand when we have excess capacity, it doesn't mean that people just want to use your goods, and they also need to evolve, or then also use. They have to grow together with you, and not just let you come in and then close the other shops. So these are the co-evolution process. Maybe at the end, I just mentioned there is a long discussion during the Club of Rome in the 1980s, before actually audio picture died. That's 1984. And at that time, they have already, Club of Rome has formed one sentence, because after 10 years of limit to growth, Club of Rome understand the solution cannot come out with science alone. It has to be the next part, or the coexist one is a humanity. And humanity doesn't mean the mention, people being. No, it's a humanity is the original real self. And there are quite a number of discussions on that. And unfortunately, even Chinese have made the translation in 1984. I got it. And these are the books, why they are still available, because I think it's difficult to read. Even it is written in Chinese, translated, but it's very difficult to read. And that's why even in Taobao, I still can buy these books today in fresh. So you see that even in a country like China with a long history of humanity or culture, we're not able to adopt the other culture or the other different thinking. Thank you. That's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Yi-Heng Cheng. And Benno, are you there? I'll call on you in a little bit so that you can actually give your introductory points, since we need to listen to you here. So I'll use this a little bit of a breathing space between speeches, so that maybe reflects now what we heard from Yi-Heng Cheng. If we think about those geostrategic situation in the world right now, a minute ago we talked about the self, right? You as the individual thinking, and yesterday another session in the plenary session, we started opening up the question of personal identity. That you are not one identity. Even if you identify yourself nationally as Turkish, I don't know if you might be Roma, if you might be Kurdish as well, if you're male, female, what your other orientation is. If, like I said earlier, you are a passionate chess player or a chess champion, or, there are many, many, many identities and roles and you play in other people's lives equally as they play in your life. So we spoke earlier about the very personal council of self. In a way, this is what Yi-Heng Cheng mentioned, as the self is the starting multicultural being. We are multicultural from within. But we look at the macro scale and the geostrategic situation right now. What Yi-Heng Cheng is referring to is the relationship with China, which is also political, economic, financial. There's been recently a new wave of parents who want their children to study Chinese because they read in newspapers that this is what's coming next. And they want their children to be prepared for the Chinese, say, dominating the markets or something like that. We have a situation with Russia, where we have an entire massive nation who is multicultural from within, that we are alienating from the political scene, right? And we have different changing views of our politicians in our own countries, Where do we go? How do we reach understanding? Not to mention some sensitive places in the world, such as the Balkans, such as Ukraine, such as Palestine and Israel. I mean, how do you practice, for some of you that might be studying a different track, instead of language or engineering that you might need as well, because you might be building things in Africa or Middle East. But also for you that are doing political science, how do you practice cultural diplomacy with the intercultural capacities that you need for the modern world? That will ensure more peaceful world, more sustainable world, better quality of life for every single one of us, right? Better quality of life socially as well, not ecologically, biologically, monetarily, but also psychologically and socially, to feel good in the world. Do we feel good in the world right now? Looking at the youth, I'm not looking at others right now. Unfortunately, the others typically are making decisions. But I'm thinking about youth because I'm concerned about youth. We don't seem to be happy, and we don't seem to be fulfilled, and we don't seem that we are leading a purposeful life. You are only responding to the expectations of the adults and the ones in charge. So how does all of this talk about intercultural dialogue translate into our personal, professional, political lives? And also, how does this intercultural dialogue, we're adding dimensions, mean intergenerational understanding? You see? So from speaker to speaker, we've been layering the relationship of in the interface between the machine and the human, right? Then we talked about the relationship amongst nations and within nations. Now, then we talked about the geopolitical, larger story of power play. But we're also talking about intergender relationship between men and women and between generations, the elders and the young. And you know, especially in more traditional societies and with strong values, there can be a clash. That can be a big clash. I've taken some time just because I want to make sure that we understand the scope of intercultural. Benno, are you there? My concern is that we have wonderful youth here and wonderful audience here, and we've been adding dimensions of intercultural understanding and interculturalism. So it would be very useful, not to mention the fact that we have a very diverse here. Ben, are you Austrian or German? Or I'm completely wrong?
Okay, I mean, I can summarize what I wanted to say.
Can you hear me? Sorry. We have Montenegro, Bulgaria, USA, China, Turkey. Who else do we have? Germany. So go ahead, Benno. If you can sum up quickly and make some points for us.
Okay.
And then your speech has been recorded, but for the audience here. Thank you.
Okay. In very brief, I initiated and organized the International Year of Global Understanding up to a UNESCO resolution for a UN International Year. And I want to just report the key experiences of that whole process over 15 years in respect of the topic of this session. My conclusion is that the fundamental problem of global understanding is that the schools are still following the curricula that have been established in most European countries in the second half of the 20th century. And that's a problem because the disciplines have been forged and designed for national interests, and the disciplines were also established for national interest, economical interest, political interest, military interest, and so on. And we can see today that these disciplines are criticized very often as knowledge silos. WAAS is making this point, the Club of Rome is making this point. I think this is only the half of the problem. The real problem is the disciplination of knowledge, that we are teaching children knowledge that is the basis for scientific work and not for everyday life in different parts of the world with different cultural backgrounds and so on. So what we should work on, in my view, if you want to have an so-called intercultural understanding on cooperation, that we need to tell children, that children learn to see their own living conditions in different places of the world in a global perspective, understanding how much they are embedded in global processes, and understanding what the consequences is of their everyday life for other people in other parts of the world. So if we are working on this, that means introducing transdisciplinary topics in schools. And then we have to learn about the own history in different places, the cultural backgrounds, and if everybody would do that, so we have a basis for a global understanding of culturally embedded, historically embedded, and also nationally embedded realities. And that could be a basis for a real cultural specification and a respectful way to talk to one another and to cooperate one another. That's in short my ideas. I'm sorry for the shortness and maybe some incoherence, but I was not able to do it better 3 minutes instead of 5. Thank you very much for your attention.
Benno, it actually wrapped up and rounded off the insight because it's an invitation to you students, right? To see how you are as an individual in all of your identities embedded in global processes, the kind of agency you might be able to derive to get a sense of social power from gaining this kind of intercultural knowledge, right? That is the most significant thing, because what all of us are basically saying, that you can gain skills, capacities, and social agency for the decisions you're making in your own life, as well as a political, econo-political subject in your country, right? As well as a global or planetary citizenship. So on the scale of microcosm that you are, and your place in the macrocosm, in the larger society and global society, these are the skills that you're going to need now and in the future even more. If you want to just play that quickly, even more, you're going to need these skills to orient yourself in the world, an increasingly technologically connected world. So you can leave it at that, and if we have time, which I don't know, we'll just leave it there. So I would like to, I'll give microphone over to Elena, because she wanted to make a point. But I would like to ask you to think of what it is that you would like to learn in terms of orienting yourself within Turkey, in the Balkans, in the Mediterranean, in the world right now, because that's a set of circles in which you are immersed at university as well. What it is that you would like to learn, what kind of education and what kind of subject matter in the curricula that you have right now would be beneficial to you to orient yourself better in your life, in your country, and as well as outside.
Just wanted to draw your attention on one particular emphasis that a Chinese colleague brought to your attention that I think got a little bit lost. I don't know if you heard him say this, but he spoke about co-evolving with compassion. I would say that is a very deep competence that we need to reflect on. How do we co-evolve along with others who are very different from us with compassion? What does that mean? Vis-a-vis the tendency of many generations of human culture to dominate airspace, dominate land, dominate power. And then we're talking, and our Chinese colleague was talking about co-evolving with compassion. This is a paradigm shift in the world, which can be talked about or it could be actually modeled and exhibited. What does it look like for us to work with others in such a way that we don't we not only don't dominate, but we open space to co-evolve with compassion across our differences as we are forming this planetary civilization for all. So I just wanted to bring us back to that, because there's a lot that gets talked about, but then there are some deep dimensions that are easily left overlooked, invisible, that are actually critical. Thank you.
Perfect. Any questions or comments? Especially from youth? Yes? Yes?
Hello, everyone. I'm supposed to look at the students, but so I'm Delia Marin, and I'm the president of an NGO called Graines de Paix, which means the seeds for peace. And just today, this morning, or while I was on, just before we started, I was with my pedagogical team, and they are faced with a no. The teachers don't want to hear this. The teachers don't want to learn. They want to do what we were just told not to do, which is to stay in their discipline. This is their 13 to 15-year-old classrooms, and we have a whole program to teach what you're saying with all the skills of me, you, the others, what can I say? And the togetherness. This is if you're in peace education, per definition, this is what we do. So we have books on this. They're validated by the system in Switzerland. But the teachers themselves, we have to find a way to reach them. So what I suggested today, I don't know if it will work, but I had to find a solution for my team. And I said, if the teachers are resistant, why not make believe that the students are the teachers, that they are going to learn the skills, the way we organize the classroom into collaborative studying, participative, active participative studying, democratic studying. And then the students will show with a lot of pride how this will be done to the teacher. And their reaction was not good. They said the teacher will feel insulted. So I hope they will succeed with this idea. But the whole idea of raising consciousness, a group of people who are so afraid of themselves because they have the teachers, they haven't done this inner work. So as students who will maybe become teachers one day, everything we have heard here is totally true, that we're changing scale. Education will no longer be learning this and then learning that. It will be learning how to solve an issue, and we will need some math, we will need some language, we'll need some historical background, we'll need some cultural understanding, but we will no longer be learning by silos. So yes, if we're studying medicine, we need to study also medicine. But if you study only medicine, you make bad doctors. A good doctor first is connected with his patient. That's the most successful way of creating his recovery. You will not make him recover just with technology. So if I can finish on that, that's what
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I am going to invite you quickly to stay in this room. I have colleagues, dear colleagues of mine, who will actually speak about biases, hallucinations, and misinformation and prejudice being encoded into AI. So we started from, remember, we started from AI and the interface between human and machine, right? Now we're going to have specialists that are going to discuss exactly that. How we're coding and how we might be dangerously coding. Uroš, if you don't mind, since while you guys settle in, you will be leading. I want to show you something real quick. So I'm going to set the stage real quick. This is what's happening on the existential risk side. This is all we have going on. But this is what's converging on the innovation and technology and science side. Between the two, we can be smashed like this. Humanity can perish between the two. Right? I just want to, why is this boy a black boy? Not because he's my poster child, but because there's an uneven distribution of disaster in the world. And these are the children that are suffering. I want you to see this guy real quick. This is the guy who 20 years ago, 2004, Neil, his name is Neil, he had an antenna instilled in his skull. So his friends, 5 of them in the world, can color his dreams, send him music, create aesthetic states in his life. So Facebook and all that and Instagram, okay, 20 years ago. So where the technology is going to go depends on our understanding, on social cohesion, on coming together to decide what we are going to do with technology, okay? So this is it. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's set the stage.